Thank you and welcome to the Wednesday, May 21st, 2025 Finance Board meeting. Called to order exactly at 6 p.m. Aren't we prompt today? So let's call to order at 6 o'clock. And let's get right to the annual town meeting recap brought to you by our town administrator. Take it away, Rebecca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have prepared a memo that I presented over to the select board after the annual town meeting, and I kind of just repurposed it, and I'm sharing it with you this evening. Specifically, we found some key takeaways from the town meeting. There were some things that we had done differently than we had in the past. As you noted, there was a presentation screen. That was something that was new this year. It was something that was very well received. However, we did change the room setup because of that. We weren't really sure about the projector screen and the seating in the front and whether or not it was going to be shining in anybody's eyes. That was not great, as you all know. We were kind of cramped and smushed up there. So we are looking at ways to improve that for the next town meeting, going kind of back to what we had originally, kind of taking a little bit more of a U shape so that the finance board and the select board can kind of see each other a little bit, because that's kind of important when the select board and the finance board are the ones mainly making the motions. And then also placing the microphones in a little bit of a different area, putting the 3 up in the front and then putting 2 kind of set back so that people can get there more easily. And then also bringing the spectator or non-resident section back to where it was originally, which was closer to the door going into the school instead of all the way in the back. So those are just a couple of the logistics that we noted. Additionally, the warrant process, we had a lot of back and forth. A lot of different boards had their eyes on the warrant itself, from the CPC committee to the finance board to the select board to departments, and there were a couple of administrative errors that we caught later in the game. Thankfully, we did catch them in time so that we could make those modified emotions, there's many emotions, but modified motions at the meeting, which were something that was caused a lot of confusion. So we have established a checklist that we're going to be putting forward that will help make sure that we address those issues prior to them becoming issues. So we're hopeful that that will fend off any of the necessary amendments prior to town meeting. But we're all human, we all make mistakes, we all just try and do our best and improve. So that's kind of where we're at. So those were the main takeaways. We had 144 registered voters in attendance, which was great in terms of a quorum. We hit quorum right when the meeting started. I mean, you all know better than I, but every single time we try and start town meeting, everyone's calling their friends, texting their neighbors. We need one more, that one last person comes in and everybody cheers at least like 30 minutes after the meeting was supposed to start. So we had a quorum, we were on time. We passed all 48 warrant articles, and we passed our $24 million operating budget. So in the memo, you'll see that just a couple of notes on process. So we had a couple of general bylaws that we passed, as well as zoning bylaws. Those don't come into effect until they go through the Attorney General. The general bylaws aren't in effect until the Attorney General approves them. The zoning bylaws are a little different. They still have to go through the approval process, but they are technically effective by the date of the town meeting when they were approved. So we still have to go through process, but there is some leniency in terms of what you would think would be effective currently or what we have to wait on. And I think Adam can speak that with the CPC. We had like CPC bylaw change. The AG hasn't approved it yet, so does that mean that the makeup changes, or do we have to wait until the AG approves it? And it's kind of, we have to wait until the AG approves it kind of thing. With zoning, we assume that it was approved, so somebody can come forward with a zoning change or an application and assume that it is passed. But if the Attorney General says, no, we didn't do something right, it could be problematic. So it's not as a smooth process as you would think, but there's a process nonetheless. All of the CPC articles that we put forward have passed. The CPC met recently, and we're moving forward with grant agreements and getting those projects off the ground. Financial articles, all of our financial articles passed, so Ellen has been at work trying to update that in the system, making sure that we have everything set for fiscal year 26. And most notably, just to put on the table, that the enterprise fund article for the water treatment facility passed. So we are working on the bond paperwork with Hilltop Securities and what's the new, it's Trope Peterson, it used to be Lock and Lord with Bound Council, but
Oh, I have no
it's a
idea.
new firm, but we're working with them. The select board is scheduled to meet on the 27th, and they will be signing that paperwork and sending that over. So hopefully that will be squared away. But overall, it was successful, and we're grateful to hear any feedback or anything that the board has in regards to either setup, implementation, operation, or anything that we can do to improve for the future.
I guess we'll start at this end of the table. Jim, anything to add? Ruth?
You know, you could always tweak things, but overall, I thought the town meeting was good.
Yeah, I thought it
Good
was great
job.
to have the quorum so immediately. That was a big deal. And I thought, you've already addressed the fact that the setup was a little awkward, that we're kind of like sitting on top of each other. So that would be something that it would be good to modify for next year. And I also just think that I just want to commend the zoning, I guess it would be, right, committee, that the presentation that they made was really just, I think to have that up on, have the slideshow about it, and it took a pretty complicated concept and it really simplified it all, and I think it made it easy for the town meeting to digest, and so I thought that was a really great job, so I just wanted to appreciate that. Otherwise, no, I thought it was, we got the business done, happy about that.
Cool. Mark?
I think my only comment, could you zoom into that? Oh, could you zoom into that meeting? So one thing it was noted is like the people up front, it was hard to see the screen. And not a deal breaker, it was awesome the way the whole thing went down. But if there was a way that view was somehow broadcast so that we could see it on our laptops if we choose to bring them.
So that's one of the tricky parts. It's not, remote isn't an option. We don't do a remote option. We don't even broadcast it live. So you couldn't be potentially at home watching the town meeting live. We had talked about releasing the PowerPoint earlier as well, getting it into, this final format. It just gets it with all those errors that happens a lot during the PowerPoint phase as well. But getting that finalized and sending that out to boards and committees and the residents so you can. We talked a lot about also what we want to do as part of, well, this is pertinent to the conversation, is that with the finance board budget and, with the finance board booklet and with the adoption of the town administrator bylaw, some of the thoughts I had thought about, since the budget will be developed by my office specifically, is that in the presentation of the budget to the finance board, that the book that we come out with would be incorporated with the financial booklet, so that the finance board could provide their summary and their intro or their letter to the town meeting, and then everything else follows thereafter. And then that would include a line item budget, because that was one of the key takeaways as well, that people didn't have a line item budget. And that document would be a separate document from the warrant, so it wouldn't cloud the warrant as well, and we would still vote on the warrant as a segment budget, so there's not tons of numbers and whatnot, but you did have that document handy. And on that document itself, we were talking about either doing, not either doing, but doing a QR code, so that if you scan the QR code, you would go to the new website and the new page, and you would have all of that electronically. So you would have the finance board booklet with all that information, you would have the warrant, and then you would have like we're gonna have a digital budget book again as well, have that digital budget book linked to that, so that they could be sitting very much in their seat and have everything at their fingertips, just with scanning the code. So we haven't been able to think of like a room logistics that would offer that, but having that information on the website in a easily accessible way is kind of the thought process we were going for.
Yeah, no, that sounds good too. I wasn't sure if you drive it with a laptop, if you could have a closed Zoom session for just a select number of people, assuming there's Wi-Fi and stuff in there, I don't know, but.
They should have Wi-Fi, but I can look into that option as well.
If you think it's useful.
Yeah, of
That
course.
way you get the timing with the speaker, you don't have to,
Yes,
Flip, it
I
was-
agree, because I had the presentation anyway, but I still wasn't sure what was
Right,
what
right.
slide we were on, so I kept on looking back as well, so, makes sense.
Couple things, just to echo what Ruth was saying. TJ did a fantastic job with that zoning presentation, was very helpful. One thing I would like to look into, just to maybe help speed up the process, is some sort of electronic voting to tabulate the counts. I know other towns do it, but I think that might be something to look into, and that may also take the pressure off if you're not really feeling something, kind of take the angry mob off you, and you can kind of vote how you want to vote. But overall, I thought it was successful. I'm glad we made quorum this year. That was great.
And it's good that you mentioned that, because I don't know if you saw the select board agenda, but that is on the agenda to establish a committee to look into electronic voting, what it would take, what we would need to do, would we purchase the equipment, would we lease the equipment, what would people like to see, how that kind of all plays out, would it be a warrant article for funding, can we implement it this upcoming year? So the town moderator will be leading that discussion before the select board on May 27th.
I'll
Right,
swing
'cause that
in and
gets-
take a peek.
Very timely.
That
Perfect.
gets complicated because for a standard meeting like we had, you probably need up to a couple hundred voting clickers, but for a controversial, how do you make sure that you have enough supplies? So I could see that being a complicated endeavor.
There's a couple of communities
But a great
that
one.
have definitely explored that and have some great takeaways. They've shared them with I think it's the Massachusetts Clerks Association. So Beth had mentioned that too, like, you have to have like another 100 tablets or whatever on site if if you're leasing them or working with a vendor, making sure that you have like an understanding. But there's been some times with some communities don't have enough and they'd have to cancel their meeting. Because of that. So it can become problematic. And it's the same way with space though, too, right? If we didn't have enough overflow space,
Right.
we'd have to cancel the meeting and figure out a different location. So it's not completely uncommon, but it causes a lot of headaches, so you're totally right.
I wonder if there'd be some way too, like, not everybody has their town meeting on the same day. Perhaps, some of the neighboring, I know Boxford does it, a few weeks after us. Maybe we could partner up with them and share the equipment.
That'd be a great idea, too. I know there was talks, and I think that's what the moderator wants to talk about as well, is he wants to change the date of the town meeting. He wants to do it on a Saturday, because I think some communities do it on a Saturday. However, we have it in our bylaw that it's the last Monday in April, so we'd have to make a bylaw change. And then we would also need to communicate with West Newbury and Merrimack because of the Pentucket Regional School District. And I believe that's why that bylaw was written, to make it so it was on the same day. So if we had an override or a school issue, we were all dealing with it.
That is true, because a couple of days after the meeting, I had talked to Beth about that, and she said there's a reason why it happens, because that was a point that I brought forth to her, is that, because the meeting was, first and foremost, I concur with the rest of the board. I thought the meeting was very well done. I'm glad everybody showed up. It was quite long. The only issue I really had is the important articles that I would have thought we would have had more discussion was at the very end of the meeting. Some people take the position that was planned that way, they all have their little nuances. But I think because of the amount of warrants that we had, a different day or an earlier time frame would have probably been better. I think people would be more attentive. I'm sure you noticed yourself when the meeting was over, it was like rats running away from, the water, sinking ship type thing. So that was indicative of the fact that I think the meeting was kind of long for some people at that time of the evening. So I do concur that a different day may be something that's beneficial. Obviously, that's up to the select board to determine that. But I think overall, I think the meeting went very well, and I want to thank you and your team for everything that you guys had done for the meeting. So thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought it went very well. Length, I don't think it was any longer or shorter than any others I've ever been to. The one thing that did throw me off, and I think if I had been a neophyte and not been so involved in the numbers to begin with, I'd have questioned, hey, how come I don't see the detail like I've seen in every other meeting? That was, I think, mentioned to me probably the most of anything. So I guess for the folks that aren't connected or not, don't know how to navigate through the system, especially the folks that are technologically challenged, we'll say, they're not going to see that kind of stuff. So it'd be nice to have a full-blown, just to look at it. Some people like to see it in black and white as opposed to just a summary. Other than that, I thought it was fantastic. And 144 had to be a record by 7 o'clock in a big issue kind of night. So, and that was pretty impressive. We're doing better. We're getting there. All right, if that's done, we can move right on to the next item, which is the 2025 year-end transfers and budget update. So again, Rebecca, take it away.
Thanks. So I put together a little bit of a presentation. It's very brief. Very brief, don't worry. It just kind of goes over exactly what we have at the, on the memo that was provided to you. Again, this was a memo that was presented to the select board with some updates. I did bring it to their attention that we would be proceeding with some transfers. The typical process would be to start with the finance board. So just an overview for those newer members and those at home. At year end, we are able to do year-end transfers starting in May. This is authorized under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 44, Section 33B. This is to make sure that if there's any shortfalls in any budget line items, we can address those prior to year end and bring us into compliance. And it also avoids the need for a special town meeting. There are only other way to make sure those counts don't end up in a deficit is to have a town meeting in order to make sure that we allocate funding from either a reserve account into those accounts to, again, make sure that there is no deficit. So that's just kind of an update of exactly what we just discussed. There's two types of transfers. There's intra-departmental, so that means that it's within the same budget. We vote our budget by object, which means salary and expenses. So that means that you can't spend salary money on expenses and expenses on salaries, so that we need to make the transfer process go forward in order to make those moves. And then there's the interdepartmental, and that means, such as the example, a highway expense to the fire department. So an expense to an expense, but within a different department. So the process for this is that, as you had seen, the finance board does monitor our accounts throughout the year. The town accountant is required under the bylaw to provide a report to the finance board. You discuss this report at your meetings. As that part of that process, both the finance board as well as the accountant and myself, we're reviewing those accounts and making sure that they're following through and that we don't see any problems. So towards the end of the year, we start to take a closer look and we say, all right, well, what's going on here? It looks like you're not going to make it to the end of the year. You usually spend, $250 a month on this, and you're not going to make it the next 3 months. What's happening? Is this, the bill's going to stop? Is there another agreement? So we start to do a little bit more due diligence in that regard. So we reach out to the departments, and then we try and get an understanding of what they need to end out the fiscal year, and we ask for a justification to be provided in writing to explain why there is going to be a deficit in the account and how much they need in order to finish out the year. So then the approval process is that it goes before the select board and the finance board. Typically, the process is the finance board first and then the select board. And again, as we discussed, the transfers are allowed in May, June, and July prior to the 15th. So for the fiscal year 2025 outlook, our revenues are currently $134,000 over budget. Those are driven by 3 factors: the investment interest, building permits, and motor vehicle excise taxes. Expenditures remain within budget overall, other than the minor transfers that we're looking for this evening, and there's no real major concerns identified. The projected year-end surplus, Ellen had taken a closer look today and provided the following. We're looking at about $150,000 to $300,000, and we continue to towards a strong close for the fiscal year. So the transfer requests that we have before you this evening, one is from the Treasurer Collector's Office. So there is a shortage in the postage line item, and we kind of had gone over this a little bit when Michelle was here. Why is it doing that? Is that stopped? That was
The
obnoxious.
echo?
I don't like hearing my own voice. That was horrible. Let's not do that again and save a little, much less. So the treasurer collector was here, and she had mentioned the postage shortfall in her budget and wanting to increase that line item for fiscal year '26. So she's looking for a transfer of $2,120, and that goes back to, again, the change to outsourcing the bills and not necessarily accounting for the postage of that in addition to the regular postage of the office's operation. So any of the personal, property is done in-house. That's not, outsourced, so not taking into consideration that postage and then shifting that money into the consulting line. So in any event, it's corrected for fiscal year '26, but we do need a transfer in order to end the current fiscal year. And then,
Can I just ask one question on that? Wouldn't the postage actually decrease when it's outsourced? Because then don't they do that bulk postage, which ends up being discounted?
I'm not
Correct.
sure we do enough to qualify for bulk, do we?
we do enough that there is a savings with the actual postage. But what we did is that we took the monies that we had in the postage line for fiscal year '25, and we took it out entirely, all of it. And we put that money into the consulting line, but we didn't take into consideration the
That
postage
some
that's
would still be
needed
in-house.
for the actual department to operate, such as the personal property taxes, such as any additional mailings that are done, whether it be tax title, whether it be any of those different mailings, were not factored in. They were just, it was all moved to that line item without thinking, oh, wait, there's other postage needs, so that account needs more money.
That makes sense.
And then the second is the payroll fee expense, and that is a total transfer of $1,400. And there were a couple of issues. That seems to be the account that we struggle with every year in terms of trying to budget for. Just make it stop. I know. So that takes into consideration the number of employee checks that are issued and the number of direct deposits, as well as we use employee forward. So W-2s still need to be printed. So even though we have an electronic system, we still actually have to print them, which is a cost to the town. And it also includes the digital hiring platform that we use through Harper's, which has an annual cost of $650. So we covered the initial cost, but failed to account for the annual cost. So we're looking for the total of $1,400. And if you have not been following along with the lovely discussions with the Select Board and the Conservation Commission, the Highway Department is looking for a transfer for the Salem Street Dam. The Salem Street Dam is in a very serious condition. It is very scary to think about the upcoming weather and whether or not that's going to have any impact on the structural stability of the dam. So as part of that effort, we are going to be proceeding with an emergency certification through the Conservation Commission, and that requires us to have consultants provide an NOI or provide consulting services for a notice of intent that needs to be filed. So while we would receive the emergency certification that would allow us to proceed with work right away, it does not eliminate the need for us to move forward with permitting. So we still have to go through that process. We have to file with Conservation, we have to file with the National Heritage, potentially the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as the Office of Dam and Safety. So we have allocated a certain amount of funding through Chapter 90, about $180,000 that would go toward the immediate repair of the dam. We also have a $98,000 grant from the Dams and Seawall, and then we also have another grant, I forget the total, I think it's closer to about $60,000 through the Division of Ecological Restoration that's focused on what do we do with the dam? Do we repair the dam or do we remove the dam, the watershed, what's in the best interest of the habitat and the environment and the area? So we were moving forward, we're trying to figure that all out, but then again, the dam started to deteriorate more and more. So the funds that we've received and we've been able to advocate for don't come into play for the emergency situation. So that being said, with the roadway maintenance budget being as low as it is currently, we're requesting the $10,000 to give us a little bit of support to provide the permitting necessary to get started before the budget resets in fiscal year '26.
So would you say this is almost just moving part of this effort from FY '26 to FY '25? This is a mechanism to get started on it and to not wait until
Yes, because
summertime? That's money that would have been spent anyways.
Yes and no, but we wouldn't have spent it if we didn't have to fix it right away. We don't want to have to fix it right away. We would like to take our time to figure out what's the best course of action, again, whether removal or repair. But that's like a 4 to 5 year process. And the dam could be tomorrow, could be next week, or it could be in 4 years. But it's going to fail. And it's just a matter of when. And not knowing and seeing the voids in the road and the potential impact is just too great to continue to let it linger. So this approach, the slip lining of the pipe will buy us, it's, not a guarantee, but they say it's about a 30-year repair. So even if it took us even longer, we wouldn't necessarily have to worry about it. I mean, there's more to it than just slip lining. That will take care of the actual pipe that goes through the dam. It's kind of like a culvert. But the dam itself, the wall is buttressing out. There's trees. It's falling outward. So we're going to need to do riprap and kind of stabilize the wall as well. So even though the pipe might last longer, the dam is still failing. So we still need a longer-term solution.
Will this project fall under your purview? In other words, will you be managing it, or does that go to an outside resource?
So it would be the superintendent, the highway superintendent. Currently, I am the acting highway superintendent, so it would be managed by me. And then once we do have our superintendent, it would be, I believe, both of us, just given the importance and the potential impact town-wide. There is water and there is gas in the roadway. We're talking about a major thoroughfare for other, for residents, for emergency vehicles, and for trucks trying to seek route to the highway. So because of that, it would be both of us.
Okay, because I guess my question really comes down to the fact that day-to-day operations would fall back upon you to present to the select board if it needs their attention, and any other board or committee, so
Oh,
on
of
and so
course.
forth. So ultimately, it's going through one person. It's not going to go off to 12 different other people.
Of course.
Okay, thank you.
So to answer your question, it's not necessarily something that we would have done, but it becomes a necessary evil at this point in time.
And then one follow-up from Brian's question is, I understand that you and the potentially the next super would be managing it, but is the actual work going to be done by our highway department, or do we need to sub out for that?
Well, actually, it would be both. So we are going to be taking advantage of a source well contract for the actual slip lining of the pipe, because we do not have the technical expertise to do that type of work. The tree removal that's associated with it, that will be, we will hire a vendor to do that. But the highway crew has graciously agreed to move the stone and the boulders that are needed to kind of, again, fix the buttressing of the wall and kind of stack them up. And try and add some stability. So they're willing to do that work. So it's kind of a group effort, but we're not solely doing the work ourselves.
Do you anticipate any sort of road closures or any modifications based on what you know as of today?
It could be.
So the Chapter 90, was some of that originally before this transfer need covering maintenance for potholes and things like that? That's
Exactly. So that's why we're asking for the transfer, because we don't want to dig into the Chapter 90 funding anymore. And given the fact that we don't know what we will find once we get out there, if there's an issue or if something happens, then obviously the first stop is to use the Chapter 90 funding, which we've received approval from the state. Otherwise, we need to go back to town meeting and we need to look at our reserves, whether that be stabilization or capital stabilization.
The roads are in tough shape, but not just in this town. You know, I drive through North Andover. For some reason, the last couple of years really did a job on all these roads, you know.
So that's for the highway department. And then there's a couple of smaller ones for the town administrator. There's a $60 shortfall in the executive coordinator salary line item. This was just due to a payroll split error with the 52.2 weeks that we have in the fiscal year. The town clerk is also, that office is also looking for a transfer. The town clerk was elected May 5th, and that doesn't necessarily give that person enough time to close out for town meeting. So they do the minutes. They have to be the one that submits all of the information to the Attorney General's office. et cetera. So between the work that's required after town meeting, and then just to have somebody train the new clerk in terms of what would need to be done, processes, where to find resources, introduce them to the Massachusetts Town Clerk and other people in Town Hall, and kind of get them going. There's a week overlap between the outgoing clerk and the new clerk, so we're looking for a transfer to cover the payroll for that 1 week. And then we have the technology transfer needs. So as you're aware, when we had the pandemic, we used CARES funding, or Denise Demkowski, the former finance director, used CARES funding to purchase surfaces for the departments to use. Those surfaces are now outdated, and they're not exactly functional for a lot of the departments. So we've been slowly replacing them with laptops like you'll see Ellen has that provide a little bit more functionality, and they also have cameras and whatnot so that they can continue to do remote meetings, because while we may be full-time here in Town Hall, a lot of the state agencies that we work with and federal agencies are working remotely still. So video conferencing is the way of the world, so this gives them the ability to do so. So we had a couple of computers that we had purchased. Additionally, we had some unexpected equipment failures over at the police department, specifically the dispatch and the monitors. Their monitors are a little bit more unique over there. They're larger and they have different capabilities. And then we also have a subscription cost for the time and attendance that we have that allows you to submit your timesheets electronically. So there was a couple of staff additions that were not filled last year that we didn't take into account, and therefore we're looking for a $6,000 transfer. And that does have a little bit of a contingency in it, just in case there is another unforeseen circumstance. If one computer goes, $2,000 would be sufficient to cover that. So we didn't want to have to come back before the board. Again, it's in an account that we are going to have extra monies in anyway, so if we don't use it in the technology line, it will fall back to free cash, which is the same thing that it would do if it sat where it currently is.
I can assume that you have a count of how many laptops or desktops the town has as part of their ownership. And with that number, you have a plan in place for replacement?
So we had received a grant from the Community Compact for an IT assessment. We've been working with CBiz, which is actually our auditing firm. They were Powers and Sullivan, then they were bought by Markham, and now it's CBiz. They have a technology division, and they were recommended to us because they said, who better to tag your assets than your auditor to, account for your assets anyway. So we've been working with them to get a better count of all of the materials, all of the equipment that we have. I don't know if Ellen's has one, but we purchased tags and barcodes, so we are going through that process. Part of their strategies that they'll be recommending will be replacement and how we phase out that equipment and what we replace, so that we're not spending a bulk of money all at once, so that we're slowly investing in our capital needs per the technology or technology capital needs. So we are working toward that, and that plan should be actually coming out before the end of June.
And will this also include any sort of corporate level software that you need? Like you had mentioned, like the time card software and, things of that caliber.
So it does include what we have for subscription costs.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And then for the summary page, I just put together a summary of the accounts. So the total number that we're looking for a transfer is $21,481.52. Again, we apologize for the cents, but given the salary and wage line, we wanted to make sure that we were specific. Funding source, we're looking at taking the monies from the health insurance line. That account has a surplus, and we have found that we are able to cover the entire request from that one line item, and there's no other impact on other budget areas. So the next step is that the finance board votes to approve, the select board will vote to approve at the May 27th meeting, and then we'll monitor additional needs through July 15th, and if there's any additional transfers that are necessary, we'll go through a very similar process where we'll put together a proposal, we'll present to the finance board, then the select board, and then move funds accordingly.
I do have a quick question. The health insurance, what percentage of our budget does that take up?
Do you have that?
Percentage of the total budget. You might have to give me 1 second.
Well, you're looking that up. I've got a question on the postage, going back to the other thing. Is it a requirement that they mail tax bills out? 'Cause I sit there, I'm like, my taxes paid through my mortgage. Could I opt into an email and it'd make my life easier, save dollars on this end, depending on how many people you sign up for it? Is that an option?
I'm not 100% positive, but I would imagine that it is required, because the same thing with the W-2s, where the W-2s, like we said, we changed over to the software. I have access to all my W-2s on that application, but yet Massachusetts general law requires us to print out the W-2s.
And actually mail them.
But I'm not sure if there's what law I would cite, or if I've been told that, but I'm sure it's probably something like that, but I can look into that.
Yeah, I mean, seems like a viable option if it can be.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't get a W-2 in the mail. We get ours just online. So. I'm
You
just
get it
surprised it's
emailed
less
to
than a
you?
lot. What's that?
Is that what you said? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I don't get one in the mail, I just get them electronically, a W-2 personally, for me.
Oh, okay.
Same for me. Just log in and download it.
We have both. Michelle's understanding is that she's been told she has to mail the W-2s. I don't know if Harper's telling her that, or if she has a law that she's,
I remember
I don't know if
going,
it's because we're government, that they're still requiring to be mailed.
I know I'm with
We can ask
ADP,
her.
and I don't have a choice. They just mail out actually, they deliver them. And we just hand them out to the employees, with one of the
Yeah.
payrolls.
we do
Same.
that too. They get delivered to Michelle, and then she'll put it in all of our offices and only mail the ones that are not there. I'll look that up, because I do remember having that extensive conversation when we were going back and forth, because if we're gonna switch to this, there should be a savings, and that was something that we thought would be a savings.
Health insurance is 2.81% of our total budget.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And that's a line item that you tend to have a little bit of cushion, because you just don't know
Right.
how people are going to.
Use
You
it.
know, if someone
Or
decides
come
to
and
have a
go.
child and they have to go on a family plan, or, you don't.
Or a family member leaves, a person with a family leaves, and it comes in with a single person, and
Right.
it changes the whole dynamic. Yeah, it's tough to peg that right on the money with people coming and going, and the
And
life
turnover always
changes.
affects it.
So everybody is all set? Anybody want to make a motion to?
You want to do them all at once,
transfers?
or?
I think why not do them en masse?
Okay, then I'd like to make a motion for the following. Financial transfers,
Yeah, you can just say
You
the
can just say
total.
the total. You can say as presented, you can just say the
Yeah.
total
oh, okay.
if you want.
I'd like to make a motion that as presented in our year-end transfers notice from the town administrator for our meeting of May 21st, 2025, the transfer of 2120 for postal expenditures for the treasurer collector, $1,400 for the payroll fee expense.
We could just go total for the total and.
Do you have the total?
At 21,000.
481.52.
481.52. I amend my motion to approve all of the items again listed in the notice that I mentioned for a total of $21,481.52.
We have a second?
I'll second that.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing as I see none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? Perfect, motion passes 6 to 1, 6 to 0, my bad. Okay, next up on the agenda.
And sorry, I will double check, but it's not the mailing, it's the physical copy of the W-2. So it's not an electronic copy, so it doesn't have to have a stamp on it to be mailed to you. But I will follow up to see if there is not, why it's not, we can't just do electronic.
Electronic.
Yeah.
I can do that with the
Do you have
1099s,
that?
but I'm not sure you can do that with a W-2.
but you just have to have the physical copy and give that to the person.
Right, you don't have to mail it.
Exactly, so I misspoke. So
Seems
that-
like an antiquated law in this day and age.
They want to get rid of electronic filing in the IRS. You want to talk about antiquated laws?
Fair enough.
They're going back to, the cavalry. But anyways,
Sorry about that.
no problem. So next up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, if available, and they are, because Ruth did such a fantastic job getting these ready.
She did, and I ran through the minutes, and they appear to be in order, so I will make a motion to approve said minutes.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing as there's none, all those in favor? Terrific. That's 6-0, approved. Moving right along, plan the next meeting and agenda, June 18th, 2025, 6 PM. So the current chair is not here. I'm filling in for her at the moment, so I think we'll have to table the agenda for now. But we sure can plan the next meeting. Is the 18th?
I think it's already, didn't we already have it?
Yeah, it's
I think it
already
was
on
in
there.
the original scope
Yeah,
of,
we kinda set
we
them all
came up with last June.
Okay.
So,
Are we all good with that still?
I'm okay with it,
Okay,
yeah, the 18th,
yes.
the date that we had
Yeah,
marked.
we did.
all right. Well, I guess that's not really an item to discuss any longer, is it?
Moving right along.
Moving right along. I like the way things moving. Other items not reasonably anticipated at the time of posting. We will start at this end this time. My bad, Brian?
No, again, just thank you for all that you did for the annual town meeting. Again, everything went well. Just those few little nuances that we had discussed earlier would be something to bring up to the select board. But thank you.
Adam?
I've got nothing.
Mark?
All set.
Ruth? Jim?
All set.
Okay, then.
I do have one item, just
Oh,
to-
you do? Oh,
I
listen.
do. I'm sorry, just to alert you all that we are having the auditors come present to the select board on June 9th. So we will be sending you over their management letter, which looks very different than what it has in the past. I think it's due to the fact that it's a new company. We were joking, Ellen was really excited to get that clean management letter, because it always had like unresolved, and now this new management letter doesn't have any of that. So we finally get to the point where we think we're in good shape, and they changed the formatting. But we will send that documentation over to the finance board tomorrow so that you have it to review. And again, the auditors are coming to present to the select board on June 9th.
How did you make a selection for a different auditor? I know that it's recommended to rotate the auditors for, but how did you make a selection?
Powers and Sullivan got bought,
Oh,
so it changed because,
Forced.
We inherited a new. Do
Exactly.
we have the same team?
so one of them had retired, Mike Nelligan, if you remember him.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Sure
retired,
do.
so he's no longer there. But you may remember Laura Stone. She was somebody who had worked with Mike originally, and she stayed on the team. So she's familiar with Groveland, but the rest of her team is new.
The staff is the same. The partner is different.
but they took over from the pre-existing firm. So most of their notes went with them, so
Correct.
it shouldn't be that onerous of a task for them.
Yeah, it's just the
Figure it out.
new firm's format as opposed to what we're used to seeing, that's all.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I thought I was gonna have a blank page this year, and now I don't have one. It
Yeah.
took me 7 years to get that thing blank.
I hear you.
In 1 year.
Just when
But
you
that's
figure out
okay.
what their requests are gonna be and you start getting them all
still
in
is
order.
actually
Say, no, we don't need
blank.
any of this stuff, we need all this different stuff. And you go, oh,
Yeah.
great.
No, they put standard language as opposed to, they have like a very standard language management comment letter that they do as opposed to like, things that you can improve. They put that in there too, but so a lot of what they have in there is just standard.
Very
language. So
boilerplate kind of
it's
stuff.
still showing that those improvements were made, but if you compare it to the prior year, it doesn't show it the same way.
That's what you get with the AI.
I told her we're gonna put something together for her, and we'll put it up on the wall and we'll
Just
frame
put,
it.
like, a fake one.
We'll
same
we'll get
format.
some gold stars from the elementary school.
Yeah.
Rebecca, I just have a quick question. The status of the project that's going out over by Town Hall, the walkway system down into the Pines, where are we with that?
So as you'll see, the machines were out there today. They're just finalizing the pathway connection from the dog park over to the connection path that was already existing. And then they're also doing the same with the walkway that was in front of the bathroom up to the pickleball. So you'll have an internal walking system to the site.
So as far as that project, everything's going along fine, no issues?
Everything's going fine. The only holdup really, honestly, unfortunately, is the railings. So it wasn't necessarily going to be the whole way, but there were a lot of complaints about there not being a railing. And even though it does meet the accessibility, we had to get a railing for the whole walkway on the one that comes from the parking lot down. So that is custom made. So that's what's the biggest delay.
And the status on the pickleball court and the dog park as far as any issues or problems to this point?
No, those are good
okay.
to go. We're doing a shade project and benches. We just presented to the CPC that we're working with a vendor on that. But everything's pretty much on schedule. The skate park should be going in late summer. We got notification from Spawn Ranch, our contractor, that they have everything ready to go, or just about.
Okay, good, thank you.
I thought the skate park came in so over budget, and then it was being revisited.
Splash pad.
Splash pad.
The skate park was put out as a design build, so they've been going back and forth with the design to finalize that, to meet within the budget that they were allocated to then move forward with construction.
Right, right.
All right, if that's everybody.
You want to tackle the next item?
Yes, sir,
Go
my
for
favorite
it.
one. Motion to adjourn, 6:45 PM.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Anybody further discussion? Seeing as there's none, all those in favor? Fantastic, 6-0. Have a great evening, folks out there, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy. Hopefully the weather gets better.
Get worse.